for
it's not
a trans,
fair. In a minute,
for
5
a male,
years, 10
for a
years,
male, because
in
men are
women's
just
sports,
born.
bro.
Yeah,
Let
I don't
them
agree.
women have their glory, man. Like, bro, you know what women go through, man? Sit your ass down, man. Get the fuck out the pool, man.
I wanted to start this video by saying that I pretty much support everyone's right to do anything that they want to do to their own body. I personally believe that what someone else decides to do to their body really doesn't concern me, because at the end of the day, that person's decision doesn't affect me at all whatsoever. So the fundamental idea of an individual transitioning from man to woman or woman to man doesn't bother me at all. If someone feels like this is what needs to be done for them to feel whole and comfortable in their own skin, then I am tremendously empathetic towards them, and I respect that. But what concerns me is our sensitivity towards this group of people may be coming at the detriment of another community. And I don't think this issue necessarily has a lot to do with transgender equality. Rather, I feel like we have a ways to go before we get all the regulations properly correct. At this point, I feel like this issue can have a negative impact on women, and the dilemma I'm discussing is Lia Thomas, who became the first transgender athlete to have ever won a NCAA championship by completing the women's 500 freestyle. This has become an incredibly polarizing topic, especially in today's atmosphere, where the lines that define gender have become blurred. The requirement for Lia Thomas to identify as a woman in the NCAA swimming races is just 12 months of hormone replacement therapy. The NCAA needs to document your testosterone level throughout this entire process, and if your testosterone levels are below a specific threshold, then you are qualified to compete. Now, there are two sides to this argument, obviously. Lia's supporters say that she is being brave in taking on this venture. NBC even has an article that is comparing her to the likes of Jackie Robinson, which is a very interesting comparison and analogy to make. With all due respect, I don't think this is the same thing. The article says that her achievements should be celebrated for the sake of the advancement of women's sports, but to be honest, I think if anything, this could potentially sabotage women's sports. The argument against Lia Thomas's inclusion in female sports is the fact that she has an unfair competitive advantage, and as a result will take away opportunities from cisgender athletes, which, to be fair, at least logically, that makes a lot of sense. At least in my head, it makes a lot of sense, especially in Thomas's case, where she was a competitive swimmer just a few years ago. And the most popular take in regards to this situation is the fact that there's another woman named Caster Semenya who went through the inverse of this situation. She's a biologically born woman who was banned from competing in female sports due to elevated levels of testosterone. On the right is William Thomas, who's now Lia Thomas, who has just competed and won in the women's swimming nationals in the USA, who clearly would have an elevated level of testosterone, at least biologically. Now, most people defending Lia Thomas say that there's no scientific evidence that supports this claim, but to be honest, I don't think there's ever been a situation where people looked into this very much. I don't think any scientist or any researcher would bother taking a female that was biologically born as a female and a male that transitioned to female and try to figure out who has a higher level of serum testosterone. And maybe as a result of this, people will, but based off of my limited understanding of the male body, just as a guy that's a fitness enthusiast and as a person that has an incomplete master's in biomedical sciences, when you tear skeletal muscle via any form of exercise, which is the muscle you are training, unless if you're doing cardio, which is training your heart, whenever you tear that muscle, you're also forming myonuclei in that muscle, which pretty much makes it easier for you to rebuild that muscle in the future. So let's say if you decide to take a prolonged break from weightlifting, but used to be a huge weightlifter in the past, well, the myonuclei in your body would make it so you could at least return somewhat into form, at least more so over a beginner that just is jumping into weightlifting. If you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger right now, for example, yeah, he's not at his point where he was when he was training for Mr. Olympia, but for the most part, for a man his age, he has a tremendous physique. My point being that Lia Thomas was a swimmer when she was William Thomas, and there's no doubt in my mind that there was a point where skeletal muscle was being torn into and myonuclei was being formed. When you consider the fact that men gain muscle several orders orders of magnitude faster than women, and their genetic potential for gaining muscle is significantly higher as well. And once it's gained, it can be regained once again, even if you are undergoing hormone replacement therapy. The argument here is that Leah has an unfair advantage due to how advanced her body has become. And when you look at William Thomas's 500 free total time, it was 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Now, when you look at Leah Thomas's 500 free time, it's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So it's not that much of an improvement throughout his career as a swimmer either. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Mike, what's the big deal? It's just sports. Well, sports is a very big deal, especially if you're just a college student that is trying to fill her resume to become a professional one day. Leah is taking away opportunities from other women who would have had the opportunity to compete in the finals, like a former Olympian and Virginia Tech female swimmer by the name of Rekha Gorgie, who argued in a letter that the participation of Leah Thomas effectively resulted in her disqualification, saying, "I swam the 500 free at the NCAA on March 17th, 2022, where I got 17th, which means I didn't make it back to the finals and was the first alternate. I'm a fifth-year senior, I have been top 16 and top 8 before, and I know how much of a privilege it is to make the finals at a meet this big. This is my last college meet ever, and I feel frustrated. It feels like that final spot was taken away from me because of the NCAA's decision to let someone who is not a biological female compete. I know you could say I had the opportunity to swim faster and make the top 16, but this situation makes it a bit different, and I can't help but be angry or sad. It hurts me, my team, and other women in the pool. One spot was taken away from a girl who got 9th in the 500 free and didn't make it back to the A final, preventing her from being an All-American. Every event that transgender athletes competed in was one spot taken away from biological females throughout the meet. I ask the NCAA takes its time to think about all the other biological women in swimming, try to think about how they would feel if they were in our shoes, make the right changes for our sport and for a better future in swimming." And to be fair, I see her point. I can imagine it being extremely frustrating if you're a woman that has been training for this her whole life, and here a former man who was ranked 462nd nationally in men's swimming is ranked #1 in women's swimming 1 year later. I'd definitely be frustrated, and to be honest, calling Leah Thomas the Jackie Robinson of trans sports is a horrible comparison, because Jackie Robinson was segregated due to the color of his skin. The color of his skin didn't give him some sort of physical unfair disadvantage. He had the same genetic makeup, at least in regards to his chromosomes, as everyone in the rest of the league. I would say Leah Thomas's situation is closer to Jose Canseco, or if a bench warmer for the NBA decided to transition and play in the WNBA. Now again, I'm not saying that trans women should not compete, because they should have the same rights as every person in the world. But if Will Thomas was 462nd and Leah Thomas easily became first place, then chances are it makes a little bit more sense for trans athletes to participate in men's sports as opposed to female sports, especially if they're consistently dominating women's sports. Or you could just make a trans league once this becomes a big enough issue and there's enough trans athletes. Either way, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.